Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Welcome back to Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. I'm here with Frank.
Hi, Holly.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Holly.
Oh, a spooky voice.
And even a spookier laugh. Oh.
That's right.
That's right.
How nice.
Yes. So how was your week?
It's been good.
I figured I'd better ask you really fast before you shame me into feeling bad.
Good call.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
It was good. As I knew we were recording, and so I was thinking, okay, what can I share? The one thing that I thought was hilarious was I was vacuuming today, and I looked down.
Nelson.
No, it wasn't anything. Although when I started vacuuming, Nelson sprinted outside.
Okay. Through his window.
Yes, I guess I have two updates. One is about the window.
Okay.
And so it's a flap. And so they push through to go out and they push back in to come back in. And there's a setting on it where you can lock it. So if they're outside, they can come in, but then they can't go back out.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that at night so that when they come in, they just can't go back out at night. Nelson is smarter than the average cat, yes, because he has figured out how to lift it up from the inside. And
we're not getting a cat,
under
just
it.
so you know.
Oh my gosh. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And today I had a work meeting, so I locked them outside where they were both outside and they couldn't come in. He
on purpose
rammed through it. Yeah.
Okay.
Because whenever
he still made it through, he ran through it.
He ran.
Is his neck broken?
No. But I did notice he ran right over to my chair where I was meeting, and he looks up at me and he's kind of shaking his head a little bit. Like, did you hurt yourself?
I've got a concussion.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Were his eyes dilating? Because he could have had a concussion. I don't know how to check it on cats.
Oh my gosh. Ridiculous. But anyways, so I was vacuuming today. And I was going over our rug, and all the spots that I was going over, I could still feel things, like little gritty things that I was stepping on. Mm-hmm. No, it's not cat food.
Okay.
Our house is cleaner than that. The cat food stays in the laundry room. But it wasn't picking anything up, so I was like, okay, it must be a backup of hair. And since it's my hair, I was going to do the job. I was going to cut it with the scissors and then rip it out. And I turned the vacuum over, and there's just a giant sock stuck in the roller over the entire vacuum.
Oh my gosh. How did you vacuum a sock?
Okay, I'm not saying it's Caden's fault, but he definitely did not vacuum up a sock.
You definitely would have seen it had you done it, right? And since there's only two of us using the vacuum, because maybe hasn't learned yet.
Maybe hasn't learned yet. We're still training her. No, it could have been me. It very well could have been me. But I thought that was so funny. It's like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, that's my update.
Very nice.
What happened to you?
And now you have a nice clean rug.
Now we do, yes. I had to go over it all again, but it actually picked things up.
So what happened to me? Let's see. I would say nothing.
Nothing?
Mm-mm. I did record another episode that we will talk about later.
You recorded one? Without me?
Yeah, I made note of one.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been officially recorded. It's just that I've taken note of it, saying, "Oh my gosh, I got to include that in the episodes." But that's it. I haven't really had much of anything going on.
Okay.
Working all the time. It just seems like that's my whole life is work. It just kind of bugs me.
You should quit.
Holly, you should be laughing with me. You don't just quit a job. What the heck
Yes, you do. Are you
are you
kidding?
talking about?
You don't like the job, you
No,
quit the
you
job.
don't. Mm.
That's
Okay.
my philosophy.
So that's it. That's my report.
That's that. Okay.
That's that.
Well, before we move on, I will just remind coffiners that this month we're doing spooky stories with Frank. So these are straight from his imagination, his creative outlet. And so let's jump into it and let's be Frank.
Thanks, Holly.
Welcome.
So I'm you're welcome. Thank you. So we're going to talk this evening about a young man who all his life has been preparing to build what he considered his dream cabin. And he found a piece of property which is up in the hills, kind of off the beaten path of the road, quite a ways actually. And he decided that he would go ahead and have the main portion of the front house or the front door of the house face the only road that went up there. Now, the interesting thing about the road is that it stopped maybe 100 yards from his house. Then you had to climb a hill and you would have to enter the house that way. The two interesting things about the house, number one, is that they didn't have all the power that they needed to the house. And so as a warning signal to the occupants of the house, there would be a beep that would go off when the power was about to go off, when it was about to be depleted. And so you would be down from power for about, I think it was right around 45, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And then the power would regenerate and you would be able to have the lights on, whatever your computers would then be rebooted. Things would just be as normal, but there was always that little emergency signal about a half hour before the power went out. So, and then the second item about this house is that he had the front door facing the actual road, and he liked to, in the evenings, just kind of sit and watch the forest. Because once the lights went out in his house, no one would even know that that house was there. No one. You couldn't see it from the road. It would be one of those hidden cabins that was secluded behind all the trees and foliage. And one particular night, and he would get a little irritated when some of these drivers would come up along this road thinking that it was a thoroughfare going to the other side of the mountain. And then they would have to stop. They would get out and have some sort of a discussion, and then they would get back in their car, turn around, and drive back down the road. So this was not uncommon because people, as they were looking for camping sites, would travel this road quite a bit. And he was getting used to the fact that they would be traveling up there. The one thing he didn't like is that because he would retire at about 11:30, quarter to 12, midnight. And the one thing he did not like is if a car came up the road after he had already gone to bed. Now, the kitchen and the front room was situated in an area to where you were looking out this double glass pane window. Then there was this kind of like a French door that led out to the porch, and then another double pane glass window. So once the lights were on, you could see, if you were down on the road, you could see the house and some movement in the house. But if the lights were off, you would not be able to see the house at all. So one particular evening, and he liked to write. And so his computer was actually set on a table facing this doorway, this glass pane, so he could actually sit out and receive, or look out and receive inspiration as he was writing. One particular evening, as he was just getting ready for bed, he laid down, and his bed, because of the closeness to the glass, he had a full house with rooms and everything, but he preferred to sleep in the room near the glass because he liked to be able to look out the glass up into the heavens and see all the stars. That's what he liked. But there was a drawback for doing that. And the drawback was that whenever he looked up into the heavens, he could see all the stars. But the drawback was that he also because of the reflection in the glass, would see all of the lights coming up the road if a car was coming up searching for a place or campsite. So on this particular evening, he would decide, after a week of cars passing back and forth and then getting out and making this little discussion, and it was always the same. It would never change. They would just stop the car and have this discussion as to, well, I thought the GPS said this and that. Anyway, he decided he would get a pair of binoculars so he could get a better look at the individuals that were down on the street on this road that were now stopping and occasionally conversing with one another, finding out what it is that they needed to do in order to get back to wherever they wanted to go. So one particular evening, he, as I was saying, that as he looks out the window, he can see the sky and the stars, of course, but the lights coming up the road would reflect off the windows, and that would create a mind alteration, because now he's no longer focused on the stars. He's now focused on the headlights of a car coming up the road.
Yeah.
One particular evening, he was laying down when the lights hit his windows, causing him to lose focus on what it was that was transpiring outside. So he stopped, he kneeled up, and he kind of looked up because he had the lights on, because he liked to have the lights on. He felt safer at that point. When he kneeled up, he heard the alarm in his home, like a fire alarm inside of his house, turn on, letting him know that the lights were about to turn off. And as he was listening to that, he started looking down the road and saw this car that had stopped. And a guy got out of the passenger side and was just screaming. I mean, he was yelling at the top of his lungs at the sky. He was yelling, and then he walked around to the driver's side, and sure enough, that beep, beep, beep was still going on, and he happened to glance up to the house. And he saw someone, our friend, looking out the glass with binoculars. And the guy down by the car pretended like he didn't notice that he had seen him. So he continued on in his rant and got to the driver's side, opened the door, and just physically pulled a guy out of the driver's seat. And he dragged him onto the ground, and it was dragging him across the ground. And he got to the back of this truck where they were riding in, and he was making preposterous demands from what he could tell. And the guy that he pulled out of the driver's seat was just adamantly saying, no, I can't. Waving his hands like, I can't do this. And he says, you will do it, and opens the tailgate and hands him a shovel. So he hands the shovel to this guy that was the driver. Now the driver has a shovel, the passenger has a shovel, and they walk just a little ways off the road and they start digging. Now the alarm is still going in the house. The lights are still on, excepting for the back, or the one of the lights right in front of the glass, because our friend had the wherewithal to turn the lights off. So the light was still in the background of the house and in the room, so they could see a silhouette through the glass. But he didn't know this. He thought that he was covered. And so he watched these two gentlemen digging a hole, and he's got his binoculars up, and he's kind of interested as far as what's happening in this hole. So they finished the hole, and then you could see that there was a true argument going on, because they reached in together into the back of this truck, and they pulled out what looked like a huge, heavy garbage sack.
Uh-oh, body alert, body.
They pulled it out of the back of the truck, and it fell to the ground in a thud. And then they dragged it over this hole, and then they dropped it into the hole, continued not digging, but filling in the hole, got into the truck, and then what he thought, they drove away. So he saw the lights go, and as far as he was concerned, they did drive down the road. At this point, the lights had turned off completely in his home. And he said, I wonder what they were doing. So what does anyone? Yes, he decides to go out of the house, and he makes his way down to where these two gentlemen were, and he looks at this freshly dug hole. So he starts digging with his hand, because he didn't take out a shovel himself, but it was freshly dug soil. So he was opening or moving the soil with his hands, and finally he got to the plastic bag. And he he could tell there was a head because of the shape of the circular portion of the bag itself. So he thought that it was a head, and he started pushing on the head to where he could make out that it was in fact a skull. And so he
Oh.
started poking, and then realized that he's near his eyes, and then he got close to his mouth when he hears this and sees this. And so whatever was in the bag sucked in that bag into his mouth, and it just made him jump. He thought, "Oh my gosh, there's a live person in this
Alive.
bag." So he hurried and pushed his finger into the bag where his mouth had actually just sucked in the bag. And he goes, "Who are you?" And he's talking through the bag, and he says, "Who are you?" And
Oh,
he
the
goes,
person in
"Well,
the bag is talking?
the person in the bag says, 'Who are you?'"
Why would that be your
And
first question if we're buried alive?
I think he wanted to know who buried him alive. And he
Oh.
goes, this our friend says, "I am," and he identifies himself. And he says, "Well, who are you, and how do you know me?" He said, "I don't know you. I just saw a couple of guys put you in a hole. I came down here to investigate, found out that you're still alive." And just as he said that, he heard a crackling noise behind him in the woods. And as he turned just ever so slightly, he was hit on the side of the head with a shovel.
Uh-huh.
And down he went. Now, this gentleman that's now buried in the hole said, "Wait, who's there? Who's there? Who's there?" And without any hesitation, this guy raised his shovel and brought it down on the guy's chest with the point down into
Oh,
the chest.
no.
So there was no way this guy was going to be surviving. In
Yikes.
the interim, while this guy was knocked out, our friend, he was now coaxing his other partner in crime to come join him when they started digging a second hole.
Mm-hmm.
So they dig the second hole, and they said, "Oh, you want to watch? You want to be a hero? Well, we'll just see how much of a hero you are." So what they did is they placed him into a hole. He's still unconscious. They placed over him a container which didn't cover him completely around, just to his sides and his top. His back was still exposed to the earth, but this hole was a little bit deeper. And they placed him in there, and then they placed this covering on top of it, but they punched a hole in this covering, and then they ran a pipe through the hole, and they left it so that it was just ever so slightly above the ground.
So he could breathe.
So he could breathe. So maybe an inch above the ground. And because I think these two were thinking to themselves, "Well, we were only paid to dispose of one body. I'm not going to get in trouble for
Oh.
two, right?" So the gentleman that's now been buried is waiting, or it's just coming to, and he's looking around, and he's realizing that he's in complete darkness.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have a light, didn't have a flashlight, no cigarette lighter, nothing. And he just started putting his hands around trying to figure out what was going on with him. And there was these two gentlemen knew that he could probably, if he woke up, push his way out of push that dome off of him,
Yeah.
so he would be able to escape. So what they did is they piled rock on top of that dome as well, so that there was no way that he was going to escape by pushing his way out. So he started whistling and started yelling through this pipe, hoping that someone would hear him. Now realize he built the cabin for solitude.
Mm-hmm.
So the solitude was now acting against him because no one traveled up there. So as luck would have it, the individual that was actually in charge of that portion of the forest ranger, did a weekly visit to the home to find out exactly, if they needed anything, make sure everything was still okay, make sure that the power was still running on its grid and up and running. And so he showed up, and this guy could hear the rolling of the tires, and he started to yell and scream. And the forest ranger had made his way up to the house, knocked on the house, no response. And he noticed the lights on, and then he heard the alarm. He waited, the lights went off. It's close to 1:00 in the morning. Okay, yeah, sure, he's gone to bed. That's all right. So he made his way back to the truck, and as he started to pull around because remember, you had to either back down the road or make a U-turn to go
Uh-huh.
over to get down the road. So as he was making his way around, he hit the tube.
Oh,
And so the tube now, it was bent to where whatever noise he was making was now muffled. It wasn't going straight into the air. It was now being pushed back into the ground. Not only that, but the second problem was that now he's going to have an issue of breathing.
mm-hmm.
The individual that lived closest to him, a mile and a half away, and he was an avid hunter. And he enjoyed hunting. He enjoyed looking for different things to hunt and scope out. When he noticed down the road this truck that had actually removed the first individual from the bed of that truck and then placed it in the hole. As he was walking by the truck, he noticed two gentlemen sitting in the truck. And as he walked by, he said, "Evening, gentlemen." And his dog started to growl. Now, the interesting thing with his dog was that it was an I guess, police dog, hunting dog, and it picked up on something, and the guy was aware enough to know that the dog had picked up on something. He couldn't quite figure out what it was, but that he had picked up on something. And so he just casually got these gentlemen involved with the conversation. So the conversation went on, and he couldn't figure out what in the world the dog was so angry about or upset about. When, as he started to leave, he started to just wave at them and then turn around to the back of the truck just to kind of give one final additional wave or act like he was calling and beckoning the dog. And he noticed in the bed of the truck that there was scrape marks. And then as they were waving through the driver's side and passenger side cab of the truck, they didn't just casually leave, they sped away. And
Hmm.
as he thought about that, he thought, why in the world would you speed away? I've just barely started talking to you. He turned around to go back to his house, and then he heard the truck coming back around from the opposite direction, and he turned around, and without hesitation, they hit him. They just physically ran him down. Now, as he was laying there, and they didn't stop, the dog was fine and grabbed the nap of his shirt and started dragging him.
Good
And as he
boy.
dragged, good boy. And as he started dragging him across the road to wherever the dog was getting ready to drag him, there was a series of feet that were now lining the road. Now the road, again, was in a solitary area. The dog stopped and started to growl. The guy was barely cognizant of the fact that the dog was now starting to growl and was upset by something. And he just casually tipped his head back to kind of see what was going on when he noticed the feet as well. There were feet. There were probably 6 pair of feet. So 12, 6 people, 6 individuals that were standing there lining the road. And as he was looking at them, he realized there was something just a little bit different because they weren't interacting with one another. They were just kind of looking straight ahead. Now, as they were looking straight ahead, one casually walked. He thought they were walking, but now that he thought about it, maybe they weren't walking. Maybe they were just making their way to him. And as they got to him, the one leaned over him and pushed his forehead deeper, deeper, deeper into the ground. In other words, not trying to hurt him or kill him, but was just pushing his head into the ground so that he had some idea of knowing that there was someone there looking at him and there was some pressure on his head and that now his head was being pushed into the ground. So the second one came along and was now taking his arm and twisting it just a little bit and recognizing that his arm now being twisted, grabbed a rock and put it on top of the arm. And this went on with all 6 individuals to where he now had his head pushed into the ground and he had rocks placed on his chest and on his arms and his legs. And he was just, what is going on here? So the dog started barking. Obviously, he just now starts barking and it kind of makes the individuals disperse. Well, this gentleman that was just hit by the car knew that his neighbor was the closest help that he could have. And so the only thing that he could do is crawl on his elbows. And he crawled just as fast and as long as he could to get to his friend's house or his neighbor's house. And he looked up the hillside as he got closer to his neighbor's house, and he realized that there was no way that he was going to make it up that hill, not with in the condition he was at or in. And so as he made his way across, he just kind of rolled over. And as he rolled over, he hit the rocks that were now placed on his neighbor that he didn't know that was placed on his neighbor. And the neighbor, hearing a little bit of rumble above, said, "Hey, who's up there? Who's up there?" And the neighbor, of course, identified himself as the neighbor, and he recognized him as the neighbor. And he said, "I need help. I'm buried under these rocks." So he called over his dog, and he kind of coaxed the dog to help move the rocks and trying to get whatever he could do to get as much weight off that dome as possible. Finally, there was enough weight off that dome that the guy that was buried was able to kick that dome up. He got his neighbor to some hospital for some help, and he asked his neighbor what it was that was actually transpiring, which what drew him to the area in which he was buried. And he told him the story about the 6 individuals that found him or was lining the road where he had actually been run over and left for dead. And that his dog started growling, and that brought his attention to these 6 individuals. And the sheriff's department came in and was talking to the both of them, because now one is standing, the guy that first built his cabin. He's now standing, and he's kind of getting his strength back, but he's talking to the gentleman that's lying in the bed. And he says, "Well, one of them's right there." And he said, and the guy, the neighbor, we're going to call him Charlie. So Charlie turns around and he says, "Oh boy, Nathan, are you sure you see anything behind me? Because I don't see anything. Are you kidding me? They're standing right there. They're getting ready to touch your shoulder." And just as he turned around to get ready to touch the shoulder, the sheriff walks in. And the sheriff starts asking questions as far as what has taken place, what transpired, how they get to the area in which they were. And the neighbor describes to the sheriff the individuals, the 6 individuals that he had seen. The sheriff says, "Really?" And so he has his little book, and he starts opening it, and he says, "Is this one of them?" "Well, yes, it is." "Okay. Is this another one of them?" "Yes, it is." Turns out that the 6 of them had actually been killed and buried on that road. And
Oh,
so
wow.
they were looking now for the individuals that had actually killed them. The sheriff's department was. They didn't realize that they were in visage form, showing themselves to other people, trying to draw attention to their plight. So these 6 had been found, and he said, "We are still missing one, an older gentleman." And he gave his name, and no one knew anything. But the guy said, I wonder if he's the one that was buried in across the street from my property."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Do you mind if we take a drive?" So they took a drive, and they went up to his property. And sure enough, there was the freshly dug space. And he said, "I think he's buried right there." So the sheriff's department, there were 4 of them, they started unearthing this hole, and they did find a bag. But there was nothing in the bag.
What?
And the individual that actually saw or was actually digging the hole and pulling the dirt away from the bag, he had recognized that there were 2 sets of footprints that were leaving from the actual hole or the grave that had been dug. And so he said, "It must have been the 2 guys I saw that were actually digging the grave. They're the ones that probably came back, took the body, and have now moved it someplace else."
Uh-huh.
And he said, "Well, that's a great theory. What were they driving?" And he said, "Well, they're driving a truck." And he said, "You describe the truck." So he gave him as good a description as he could, but he recognized, and he said to the sheriff, "Please understand that I was up there in that window looking out through my binoculars. I was more interested in what they were doing as opposed to the truck they were driving." He said, "Okay, well, we'll just put out an all points bulletin and see what we can do to find this a truck that shouldn't be in the area." And about 2 days later, they found a truck, and it was hidden in the bushes. And as they became closer and closer to the truck to investigate what was going on with that truck, that it might be the possible truck that was seen at this site, they noticed an individual that was now up under one of the rear wheels of the truck itself. He had been run over. The second individual was also behind the truck, but was tied to a rope, and it looked like he'd been dragged. And so, and the sheriff said, this must be the two guys that were actually seen digging this grave, but what happened to them? And as Charlie, was being questioned once again to see if these were the two guys that had actually caused the problem to begin with, recognized the one, but not the other. And he said, I think this is one of them, but I don't know about the other guy. I wasn't really paying attention, but I'm pretty sure because of his stature that this was the one guy. And he said, okay, so we're still missing a body. And he said, well, I don't know if we're missing a body because the body that I think was buried is actually in my house.
What?
He's in your house. And he said, I haven't been able to go back. He said, I haven't been able to go back to the house because when the lights go on, there's a shadowy figure in front of my mirror or in front of my glass. And I can't go back into my house because I'm afraid that I don't know who's in my house. And I'm afraid that I might get killed because they may have found me and are trying to find and kill me. So the sheriff said, well, okay, well, why don't you just show us what it is that you're experiencing? From the street, they were there waiting for the lights to turn back on inside of Charlie's house. And again, this was at night, had to be at night in order for them to see what Charlie was experiencing. Sure enough, the lights came on, but there was no figure there. There was nothing they could see. Nothing was there. Nothing was happening. Nothing out of the ordinary. And so they made their way up to the porch and to the landing. And the officer, the sheriff, if you want to call him that, the sheriff, opened the door and he said, can you just kind of show me around the house? And as soon as Charlie had stepped into the house, he was pushed to the side and the sheriff was pushed off the balcony. And he fell off the balcony with a loud scream and thud. And the voice that he heard, the voice that Charlie heard, was this: I just want you to know I'm grateful for you saving me. And now you must die.
What? Wait, what?
Wait, what? So there was no survivors, Holly. No one would survive that. He wanted to be the only one. Actually, he was dead anyway. So.
Wow. Wait, so the killer was the guy that
was killed. That they
killed.
thought was still dead initially, but that they shoved the shovel into his chest.
So he didn't actually die.
Oh, he died.
It was his ghost?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. So anyway,
He just wanted everyone to die.
I think he was just taking it out on everybody, and I think he was still kind of angry, and so he just, I want to talk to you by yourself, and who knows what happened to Charlie. So the officer wasn't around to witness it. That's for sure. He was pushed off the balcony, off the porch.
Whoa.
Welcome to the forest. Hope you enjoy your cabin.
Isn't it lovely here?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
My gosh.
Oh, well. Okay. All right. Any ideas on that one, Holly? Any comments at all?
No. I'm still trying to think through it.
That's what I want you to do.
I know. But it doesn't make for a good podcast because I don't have any questions. Or comments because I'm just thinking about it.
Oh, boy. Well, in all honesty, you did have to leave for a minute to let Nelson out of the room.
That's true. I did. He started screaming. Well, I guess that's one thing. At least the dog survived.
Yeah, I guess. I
Nice
didn't.
dog. It was the killer's dog. Wait, no, it wasn't. Just
No.
kidding.
Yeah, it wasn't the killer's dog.
No, it wasn't. But I mean, he survived.
My gosh, you said that, and I thought, was it the killer's dog? I'm thinking,
Wait.
like, what was it?
Was it? Oh.
And by the way, coffiners, I don't know exactly when this episode will drop, but the other one where we talked about the Ouija board or talking board and the good luck. The more and more I think about it, I just think the phrase of good luck, was it good luck to find the board or good luck after knowing what the board can do? So,
that's true.
Yeah. So that, I think that's what set the girls at ease, saying that, oh, it just means good luck. Yeah. Well, what does it mean? Good luck in surviving me, good luck in what I can tell you.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Ooh, that's a good little tidbit of that.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's that one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's another spooky story with Frank, and there are more to come. So don't worry.
I think we have 8, right, planned for this month?
Yeah.
Okay. So watch for them. They're going to be dropping. And you can, oh, yeah. Hopefully you aren't going to be turning away from this. Oh, that was silly. Because they will get better. Trust me. They will. Even if you think that this one was not a waste of time, but a way of thinking.
Not a waste of time.
What is he thinking?
Oh my gosh. What is this? What? Wait, what?
Never build a cabin up the top of the hill with windows facing a vacant road.
Oh my gosh. Lesson learned.
Okay.
People will bury people in your yard.
Go. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Anyway. Well, that's that.
Yeah.
Get excited for the next one.
Okay. I am. I'm excited. I already have them outlined.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Well,
bye, coffiners.
See you next time.
Thanks, coffiners. Thanks for joining us.